The night everything began to crack started like any other ordinary. Evening in the city. Rain pressed against the apartment windows. The kind that made traffic lights smear into long red and green lines. I stood in my kitchen holding a paper bag that had already gone cold to cheeseburgers, fries, and a slice of apple pie from the diner on 8th Street. Her favorite, or at least the version of her I thought I knew. I checked my phone again. No new messages. 10 minutes earlier, she'd texted, running late. Don't wait up. That sentence sat heavy in my chest. Don't wait up. Like I hadn't already been waiting for weeks. I set the food on the counter anyway. Habit, hope, pride, mixed with denial. People talk about heartbreak like it's loud, like doors slamming or shouting matches in the rain. But the real damage? It's quiet. It creeps in through pauses, through unanswered calls, through moments when you start rehearsing excuses for someone who didn't ask you to defend them. I leaned against the counter and let my mind drift backward. When none of this felt fragile, we met in a way that felt accidental, but perfect enough to believe in. A downtown bookstore, the kind squeezed between a nail salon and a closed-down video rental shop. She'd been standing in the aisle, flipping through a paperback like it owed her money. I made a comment about the ending being overrated. She looked up, eyes sharp, half smiling like she'd already decided I was interesting but not yet safe. Her name was Leela, short name. Soft voice. Strong opinions. She told me she worked in digital marketing, hated bland coffee, loved late-night city walks, and never trusted people who rushed intimacy. I liked that about her. Or maybe I liked what I thought it meant, that patience would be rewarded. We talked for 40 minutes between dusty shelves. About music, about ambition, about how the city makes everyone feel temporary. When she laughed, she tilted her head back like she didn't care who saw. When she listened, she really listened. No phone. No drifting eyes. When she gave me her number, she didn't flirt. She just said, "Text me if you want." No pressure. I texted her that night. She replied immediately. That was the first hook. Weeks passed fast. Too fast, messages turned into coffee. Coffee turned into dinners. Dinners turned into long walks under streetlights, where the city felt like it belonged to us. She told me things she said she rarely shared. Stories about her childhood, about trust, about why she moved to the city alone. She used words like connection and energy and timing. Words that sound harmless until you build meaning around them. I noticed something early, though. A small thing. The kind you ignore when you're invested. She never called what we were or anything. Not dating. Not seeing each other. Not even a situation. Just us. Whenever I tried to define it, she'd smile and say, "Why label something that's good?" And I'd back off. Because it was good. Or at least it felt good enough to protect. I became reliable, predictable, present. I was the one who remembered her deadlines. The one who showed up when she had a rough day. The one who listened without interrupting. I brought soup when she was sick. I helped her move apartments. I canceled plans when she said she needed company. I told myself this was what loyalty looked like. I didn't notice when the balance shifted, or maybe I noticed and chose silence. Back in my kitchen, the rain kept falling. My phone buzzed. A message from Leela. Sorry, something came up. Can we rain check? No explanation. No time. No reassurance. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over a dozen replies I never sent. Instead, I typed, "Of course. Hope everything's okay." 3 dots appeared, disappeared. Nothing else came through. I sat down at the small table by the window and finally let myself feel the weight of it. The way I'd been shrinking my expectations. The way I'd been editing my needs to keep her comfortable. The way I'd been telling myself love was patient, when maybe it was just quiet desperation. Across the street, a couple laughed as they hurried under one umbrella. Something sharp twisted in my chest. I didn't know it yet. But this was the beginning of the end. Not because she stopped choosing me, but because I was about to realize I never really was the choice. Asterisk silence doesn't arrive all at once. It stretches. It tests you. It waits to see how much you're willing to swallow. After that night, the rain check became a pattern. Plans floated instead of landing. Conversations started strong and ended thin. I'd wake up to a message that felt warm, then spend the rest of the day chasing the echo of it. Lila still texted every morning. That was the trick. Good morning. Hope today's kind to you. Just enough to keep the thread alive. But something had changed in the tone. Less curiosity. More convenience? I told myself I was imagining it. The city does that to people. Makes you suspicious. Makes you hungry for meaning where none exists. Still, I started counting things. Who initiates? Who asks questions? Who carries silence? That math never lies. We sat across from each other a week later at a rooftop bar downtown. Neon signs blinked behind her like a restless conscience. She looked good, effortless, like someone with nothing to prove. She talked about work, about a new client, about how exhausting people could be. I listened. Like always, when there was a pause, I asked, "Where do you go when things get heavy?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I don't really lean on people like that. That was new. I nodded anyway. Moments later, her phone lit up. She checked it fast, then turned the screen face down. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said too quickly. "Just noise." Another word you don't question when you're trying to stay welcome. She left early that night. Hugged me instead of kissing me. Said we'd talk soon. Soon became days. I started noticing the city differently then. The couples arguing softly on sidewalks. The men staring at their phones on subway platforms like they were waiting for permission to move on. The women laughing too loud at jokes they didn't find funny. Everyone seemed to be negotiating something invisible at work. My focus slipped. My friend Jordan noticed before I did. We grabbed lunch at a deli near the office, turkey sandwiches, chips, soda sweating through paper cups. "You're doing that thing," he said. "What thing?" "The thing where you pretend you're fine because you don't want to admit you're invested?" "It's not like that," he raised an eyebrow. "Isn't it?" I didn't answer. Because answers make things real. Jordan leaned back. "Does she show up for you the way you show up for her?" I took a bite of my sandwich. Chewed too long. Swallowed nothing but pride. "Relationships don't have to be transactional," I said. "No," he replied. "But they shouldn't feel one-sided either." That sentence stayed with me longer than it should have. That night, I scrolled through old messages. The early ones. When she asked about my childhood, when she sent voice notes just to hear herself laugh, when she said things like, "I like how steady you are, steady, safe, reliable." Words that sound like compliments until you realize they don't mean desire. I remembered something she'd said months earlier, almost casually. "I've dated intense guys before. It never ends well." At the time, I'd been proud not to be one of them now. I wondered if I'd gone too far in the opposite direction. The first real crack came on a Thursday evening. Was walking home when I saw her Lilith standing outside a restaurant 2 blocks from my place. She was laughing, head tilted back. Same laugh that pulled me in that first day. She wasn't alone. The guy beside her leaned close when he spoke, comfortable, familiar. The kind of closeness you don't rush. I stopped walking. She touched his arm when she laughed. The city noise faded. All I heard was my pulse. I didn't confront her, didn't wave, didn't step closer. I told myself there was an explanation. There's always an explanation when you need one. She texted me an hour later. "Hope your night's going well." I stared at the message like it was a test. I replied, "Yeah, just heading home." She sent a smiley face. Nothing else. That was the moment something hardened inside me. Not anger, not jealousy, awareness. Later, lying in bed, I replayed every moment, every sign I'd ignored, the way she avoided future plans, the way she never introduced me to her friends, The way affection always stayed just short of commitment. I'd mistaken access for intimacy, consistency for choice. Somewhere between midnight and morning, a quiet thought formed, dangerous and honest. What if this wasn't about timing at all? What if she'd already decided and just hadn't told me yet? I fell asleep with that question burning through me, unaware that the truth wasn't far away, and when it came, it wouldn't arrive gently. The city has a way of answering questions when you stop asking them out loud. The next Saturday morning, I ran into Mason, not literally. That would have been easier. Jordan dragged me to a neighborhood gym I'd been avoiding for months. Loud music, exposed mirrors, people lifting like they were trying to prove something. I didn't belong there. But distraction felt better than sitting alone with my thoughts. I was halfway through a set when Jordan nudged me. "Don't stare," he muttered. I followed his gaze. There she was, Lila, hair pulled back. No makeup. Same calm confidence she wore everywhere. And beside her him, tall, relaxed, wearing familiarity like a second skin. He leaned in to say something. She laughed. He handed her a water bottle like it was muscle memory. My chest tightened. Jordan didn't ask. He didn't need to? That him? He said quietly. I don't know, I replied, even though my body already did. I left before she noticed me. Or maybe she did and chose not to say anything. Either way, the message was clear. This wasn't coincidence. I spent the rest of the day restless, cleaning my apartment, replaying conversations, looking for proof that I wasn't just an extra in someone else's story that night. I finally asked, "Hey, random question. Who's Mason?" 3 dots appeared. Stayed longer than usual. "Just a friend," she replied. Nothing more? I stared at the words, feeling something sour arise in my throat. Not because she had friends, but because I'd never heard his name before, and now he was everywhere. I typed, deleted, typed again. "You two seem close." Minutes passed. "We've known each other a while," she wrote. Why? There it was. The shift. The subtle defensiveness. I chose my words carefully. "Just curious." She sent a thumbs-up emoji. The conversation died right there. Over the next week, Mason's presence became undeniable. Social media photos cropped just enough to hide faces. Stories tagged in places she'd never invited me to. Moments I wasn't part of, I told myself not to spiral. But the mind doesn't obey orders when the heart feels threatened. Flashbacks started surfacing without its permission. The time she canceled dinner last minute. The way she'd go quiet on weekends. The fact that she never slept over always early mornings. I'd filled in those gaps with trust. Now the gaps had a name. Jordan came over one night with takeout fried chicken. Coleslaw, cornbread, comfort food. The kind you eat when you don't want to talk, but know you need to. "You haven't asked her directly," he said. "I have," I replied. "In my own way?" He shook his head. "Indirect questions only get indirect answers." I picked at my food. "What if asking directly changes things?" Jordan looked at me. "What if not asking keeps you stuck?" That hit harder than I expected. I asked her to meet the next day. She suggested a park near the river. Neutral ground, public, safe. She arrived late. Not rushed. Not apologetic. We sat on a bench watching joggers pass like they had somewhere to be. "I feel like something's off," I said. She sighed. "I was hoping we wouldn't do this." Another phrase that felt like distance disguised as maturity. "I just want honesty," I said. "That's it." She stared at the water for a long moment. "Mason and I. We have history," she said slowly. "It's complicated." The word landed like a warning sign. "Are you seeing him?" I asked. She hesitated. That hesitation was the loudest answer I'd ever heard. "I don't like labels," she finally said. "You know that." I laughed once. Sharp. Funny how labels only matter when they trap you. Her eyes hardened. "That's not fair?" "No," I said quietly. "What's not fair is making me feel like I'm imagining things." She stood. I never promised you anything. There it was, the sentence that rewrites months into nothing. That night, alone again, I replayed her words. Not what she said, but what she didn't. She didn't deny choosing him. She didn't reassure me. She didn't fight to stay. I realized something then, something I'd been avoiding. I wasn't competing with Mason. I was competing with her indecision, and I was losing. Still, a part of me clung to hope, to the idea that clarity would come, that truth would land clean and final. I didn't know yet how messy truth could be, or how close. It's been discovering that the story I'd been telling myself wasn't the one she was living. Asterisk, after the conversation by the river. Something shifted, but not the way it should have. We didn't stop talking. That was the problem. Lila didn't disappear. She didn't block me or fade into silence. She stayed just close enough to keep the connection alive, just distant enough to avoid responsibility. A message here. A check-in there. Familiar warmth without commitment. Emotional access without accountability. Hope turned into a habit. And habits are hard to break. She'd text late at night, when the city quieted and people got honest. You ever feel like you're too much for some people and not enough for others? I'd answer every time, thoughtfully, carefully, like my words still mattered in those moments. It felt like I was still the one she trusted. Still, the one she leaned on when the noise faded. That illusion kept me hooked longer than I want to admit. But daylight always told a different story. I started seeing the pattern clearly, even as I stayed inside it. She reached out when she felt lonely. She pulled back when things felt real. She showed up emotionally, but never fully stepped in. And I kept accepting it because walking away meant admitting I'd misread everything. One evening, we ran into each other outside a small pizza place downtown, completely unplanned. She looked surprised. So did I, hey, she said, like we were old friends who'd never crossed a line. We ate together. Pepperoni slices, paper plates, standing up, casual, comfortable, too easy. For a moment I forgot all the tension. Forgot Mason. Forgot the unanswered questions. It felt like before. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and smiled, without realizing it. That smile wasn't for me. I noticed how she angled the screen away, how her body shifted slightly, consciously creating space. I said nothing, but something in me finally got tired. Later that night, alone again, I opened my notes app and started listing facts. Not feelings. Facts. She never made future plans. She never prioritized time with me. She never introduced me to anyone important. She never chose me when it required sacrifice. Seeing it written out stripped the fantasy bare. This wasn't confusion. This was avoidance. The next week, I decided to pull back. Not dramatically. Just enough to see what would happen if I stopped carrying the weight. I replied slower, shorter. I stopped asking follow-up questions. Stopped filling silences. The effect was immediate. She noticed. You've been distant, she texted. Everything okay? I stared at the message, heart pounding. This was the moment, wasn't it? The one I'd been waiting for. The moment where she'd step forward instead of me. I typed, I'm just giving you space. Her response came fast. I didn't ask for space. I almost laughed. She hadn't asked for commitment either. We met again a few days later. Her suggestion this time. Coffee shop. Afternoon light. Neutral territory. She studied me like I'd changed into someone unfamiliar. You feel different? She said. I am, I replied. She frowned. I don't like it. That sentence told me more than anything else she'd said in months. You don't like that I'm not available on demand? I said calmly. That I'm not filling gaps anymore. That's not fair, she said again. That word followed her everywhere. I leaned forward. What do you want from me, Lila? She opened her mouth, closed it. Silence stretched between us. I don't want to lose you, she said finally. And what does keeping me look like? I asked. She didn't answer. That night I walked the city longer than usual. Past bars, past lit windows, past couples arguing and making up on sidewalks. I felt strangely calm, like someone who'd already lost something and was just waiting for the body to catch up. A flashback hit merely days. Her smile, her voice saying, "I feel safe with you." I realized then what I'd been to her. Not a partner, not a choice. A refuge. And refuges don't get chosen. They get visited. The truth was forming slowly but clearly. She didn't need to reject me outright. She just needed to never fully choose me, and the hardest part. She wasn't doing it out of malice. She was doing it because she could. Because I let her. I went to bed that night knowing something had to end soon. Not because of anger or betrayal, but because self-respect doesn't survive indecision for long. Still, I didn't know how it would end, or how much it would cost me to finally hear the words she'd never said out loud. There's a moment before every ending where you feel it coming. Even if you pretend not to. Mine arrived on a Wednesday evening, disguised as an invitation. "Can we talk later?" Lila texted, no emojis. No softness. Just the words. I stared at my phone longer than necessary. I already knew this wouldn't be one of those late-night emotional check-ins. This felt structured. Like a meeting. Like something she'd rehearsed. "Sure," I replied. She chose a bar this time. Not our usual places. Somewhere louder. Somewhere public enough to keep things contained. The kind of place people choose when they don't want scenes. When I walked in, she was already there, sitting straight, hands wrapped around a glass she hadn't touched. Mason wasn't there. But his absence didn't make me feel better. We exchanged a hug that lasted a second too long for strangers and a second too short for anything else. "How've you been?" she asked. I smiled. "Honest or polite?" She exhaled. "Honest." "Clearer," I said. Finally. That made her flinch. She talked first. About stress. About feeling pulled in different directions. About how life felt crowded and uncertain. She used a lot of careful words, like she was stepping around something sharp. I listened. Because listening had become second nature. When she finished, she looked at me like she expected understanding to do the work for her. "I don't think I can give you what you want," she said. I nodded slowly. "That's not new." She blinked. "It isn't?" "No," I said. "You've been showing me for months." Silence settled between us. Thicker this time. She tried again. "I care about you. I really do." I held her gaze. Care isn't the same as choosing. Our jaw tightened. "Why does everything have to be so absolute with you?" That stung. Because I'd been anything but absolute. I'd bent, waited, softened myself into whatever shape kept her close. "I'm not asking for forever," I said. "I'm asking not to feel optional." She looked away. That was the answer. I thought about all the times I'd lowered my voice instead of raising a concern. All the times I'd told myself this is just how modern dating is. All the pride I'd swallowed because I didn't want to look insecure, and suddenly, something in me snapped, not loudly, but cleanly. "You never lied to me," I said quietly, "but you never told me the truth either." She frowned. "I didn't want to hurt you." I gave a small laugh. "You didn't want to feel like the bad guy." Her eyes filled. But she didn't deny it. That's when I understood something important. She wasn't confused. She was comfortable with my presence, with my attention, with the version of me that asked for nothing and gave everything, and I had helped create that version. I stood up first. She looked startled. "Are you leaving?" "Yes." Her voice softened. "We don't have to end this." I paused. Looked at her. Really looked. "You're right," I said. "We don't, but I do." That landed. For the first time, she reached for me not physically, but emotionally. "What if I need time?" I shook my head. Time only helps when both people are moving in the same direction. She opened her mouth, closed it. I walked out before she could say something that would pull me back in. Outside, the city air felt colder, sharper, real. I walked without a destination, letting the noise and movement wash over me. My phone buzzed once. Then again, I didn't check. A flashback hit me: the bookstore, the laugh, the feeling of being seen. I realized I wasn't mourning her. I was mourning who I'd been when I believed effort guaranteed love by the time I got home. My phone was quiet, so was my mind. The next few days were strange, empty, peaceful in a way. Grief sometimes is after the storm passes, Jordan called. You good? I think so, I said. And for the first time, I meant it. I stopped checking her socials. Stopped waiting for messages that wouldn't come. I filled my time with work, the gym, long walks, conversations that didn't feel like negotiations, and slowly something returned. Pride, not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind that lets you sleep at night. A week later, I ran into Mason by accident. Grocery store. Frozen aisle. He looked at me, recognition flickering. Awkwardness followed. Hey, he said. Hey. We stood there for a second. Two men connected by a story neither of us had written honestly. She talks about you, he said, almost apologetic. I nodded. I know. He hesitated. She said you walked away. I met his eyes. I had to. He didn't argue. That was enough. That night, lying in bed, I finally let the title form clearly in my mind. Not as bitterness. Not as blame. Just truth. She wasn't evil. She wasn't cruel. She just wasn't that into me. And realizing that didn't break me, it freed me. Asterisk. The days after I walked away didn't hurt the way I expected. They felt hollow. Like a room after furniture's been moved, out quiet, echoing, honest. I woke up without checking my phone. That alone felt unfamiliar. For months, my mornings had started with anticipation, waiting for a message that set the tone of my day. Now there was nothing to wait for, and strangely, that made breathing easier. But silence has layers. The first layer is relief. The second is grief. The third is reflection. That third one takes its time. I started noticing how much of myself I'd put on hold. The gym wasn't about distraction anymore. It was about reclaiming space in my body. Each rep felt like proof I still existed beyond someone else's attention. I worked late by choice, not because I was filling time. I said yes to invitations I'd once declined in case she suddenly wanted to meet. Freedom didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived with small decisions. Jordan and I met up one evening at a local burger joint. Grease-stained paper, loud TVs, familiar comfort. You seem lighter, he said. I feel clearer, I replied. He nodded. Same thing, different stage. I thought about that on the walk home, clearer, not healed, not fixed. Just honest, the memories still came, though uninvited. Sharp, a late-night song we used to share played in a grocery store. I felt it in my chest before I could stop it. A street corner we'd stood on together made me slow my pace. But something had changed in how the memories landed. They no longer made me question my worth. They just reminded me I'd cared and caring, even when it costs you, isn't a flaw. One night, about 3 weeks after everything ended, my phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen. I didn't open it right away. That alone told me how far I'd come. When I finally did, the message was simple. I miss talking to you. No apology. No accountability. Just longing. I stared at the words, feeling the old pull tug at me. The familiar urge to comfort, to respond, to reopen something that had never fully closed. Then I imagined the cycle starting again. Late-night messages. Emotional closeness. Daytime distance. Uncertainty disguised as depth. I typed 3 words. I don't. It erased them. Not because they weren't true, but because I didn't need to say them. Instead, I wrote, I hope you're well, she replied almost instantly. Can we meet? Just to talk. I set the phone down. Some conversations only exist to soothe. It's a person who caused the damage. I didn't know her that anymore. Weeks passed. The city shifted seasons. Storefronts changed displays. Life kept moving without asking for permission. I started noticing other people not as replacements, but as possibilities. A woman at the coffee shop who laughed easily and asked real questions. A neighbor who lingered in conversation instead of checking the time. Moments that felt mutual, not managed. It dawned on me how different it felt when someone wanted to know me, not just what I provided. I wasn't in a rush for the first time. I didn't feel behind. One afternoon, I found an old note on my phone from months earlier. Something I'd written after one of those confusing nights with Lila. If loving her means shrinking, this isn't love. I read it twice. The clarity had always been there. I'd just been too afraid to act on it. That realization didn't make me angry. It made me wiser. The final closure came unexpectedly. I was walking through downtown when I saw her again. Across the street, with Mason, they were arguing quietly but intensely, body language tense. Something unraveling between them. For a split second, old instincts flared. Curiosity, comparison, validation. Then it passed. I didn't cross the street. Didn't slow down. I kept walking. That was the moment I knew I was done, not because I'd won, but because I no longer needed to. Later that night, sitting alone with takeout barbecue ribs, cornbread, iced tea reflected on everything the experience had taught me. That attraction isn't earned through effort alone. That consistency without reciprocity becomes self-betrayal. That walking away isn't weakness, it's self-respect. Most of all, I learned this. When someone is right for you, you won't have to convince them. They won't hesitate. They won't keep options open. They won't make you feel like love is something you're auditioning for. The city outside my window hummed with life. Possibility, movement. I wasn't healed yet, but I was free. And freedom, I was learning, was the real beginning. Freedom doesn't announce itself. It waits for you to notice. By the time autumn settled into the city, I'd stopped measuring my days by absence. I wasn't counting how long it had been since we last spoke. I wasn't rehearsing explanations for a reunion that wasn't coming. The space she left behind had filled with something sturdier than hope. Routine, mornings, started early now. Not because I needed distraction, but because I wanted momentum. Coffee from the corner spot. A walk past the river before traffic thickened. The city felt different when I wasn't carrying unresolved questions in my pocket. I ran into Nate one afternoon, an old friend I'd lost touch with years earlier. We grabbed tacos from a food truck and caught up on lost time like no time had passed. "You seem grounded," he said. "What changed?" I considered that. "I stopped waiting for someone to pick me," he smiled. "That'll do it." The shift wasn't dramatic, but it was complete. At work, I started speaking up instead of smoothing things over. I took on a project I'd avoided because it meant visibility. Risk, ownership. Turns out, confidence grows fastest when you stop negotiating with yourself. I thought about Leela Lesnot because she'd become irrelevant. But because she no longer defined the edges of my world, that's when Claire entered it. She wasn't a lightning bolt. No cinematic entrance. No immediate spark demanding interpretation. We met at a charity event downtown. She worked in urban planning, direct, observant. She asked thoughtful questions and waited for real answers. When she laughed, it was quiet and genuine, not performative. We talked for 20 minutes, then 40, then an hour. When I asked for her number, she didn't hesitate. That was new. Our first few dates were simple. Diner breakfasts, evening walks, conversation that didn't feel like a puzzle. She remembered things I said. She followed up. She made plans and kept them. When she canceled one sexually canceled, she explained why and suggested another. Time without me asking, I noticed how my body responded differently. No tension, no guessing, no urge to impress, just presence. One night, sitting across from her at a small Italian place, she looked at me and said, "You're easy to talk to." I smiled. "That's a first." She raised an eyebrow. "That surprises me." It shouldn't, I said. I just didn't always choose people who wanted to listen. She didn't flinch at that. Didn't pry. Just nodded. That kind of understanding lands softly, but it stays still. Growth gets tested. A month into seeing Claire, I ran into Lila again. This time alone. She looked tired, different, like someone who'd been running from something and finally slowed. Down, we stood awkwardly near a subway entrance. City noise filling the gaps between words. "You look good," she said. "So do you," I replied, and I meant it. She hesitated. "I heard you're seeing someone." I nodded. "I am." Something passed across her face, surprise, maybe regret, maybe just curiosity. "She's lucky," Lila said. I didn't respond right away. Not out of spite, but because I was choosing my words carefully. "She's present," I said. "That's the difference," Lila swallowed. I didn't realize what I was doing back then. I looked at her, really looked. Not as someone I wanted, but as someone I'd learned from. "I think you did," I said gently. "You just didn't think it would cost you." She didn't argue. We said goodbye without drama. No promises. No nostalgia disguised as closure, and when I walked away, I didn't feel heavy. I felt finished. That night, I told Claire about Lila, not the details. Just the truth. "There was someone before you," I said. I stayed longer than I should have. Claire listened. Asked one question. "What did you learn?" I answered without hesitation. "That love shouldn't make you smaller." She reached for my hand. No speech, no reassurance. Just contact. That was enough. Weeks later. On a cold evening when the city smelled like rain and streetlights reflected off wet pavement, Claire and I stood on my balcony watching traffic move below. She leaned into me. Comfortable. Certain. "I like where this is going," she said. "So do I, no doubt. No fear. No invisible competition, just choice." The irony didn't escape me the moment. I stopped trying to be enough for someone who couldn't choose me. I became exactly enough for someone who could, and that's when the title finally made sense, not as bitterness, but as wisdom. She wasn't that into me, and that truth led me to someone who was. Asterisk. There's a strange calm that comes after you stop rewriting the past. Not forgiveness. Not forgetting. Just acceptance. By winter, the city had hardened into steel and cold air. Windows stayed shut. People walked faster. Everyone seemed focused on where they were going instead of who they were leaving behind. I liked that. It matched where I was Claire, and I didn't rush anything. No dramatic declarations. No pressure to perform happiness. We built something steady brick by brick, without pretending it was destiny. It was choice repeated, intentional, and that made all the difference. One evening, months later, we sat in my living room, eating takeout grilled chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. Ordinary food. Real food. The kind you eat when you're not trying to impress anyone. She glanced at me and said, "You know, you don't disappear when things get quiet." I looked up. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "Some people need constant noise to feel connected. You don't." That sentence hit deeper than she realized, because once upon a time, I had been the noise. The filler. The emotional background music, and I'd mistaken that role for love. Later that night, alone in bed, I thought back to who I'd been at the beginning of the story. The man waiting by the window with cold food and warmer hope. The man explaining away disrespect because it didn't come wrapped in cruelty. I didn't hate that version of myself anymore. I understood him. He wanted to believe effort mattered more than alignment. That loyalty could earn desire. That patience would eventually be rewarded. Those beliefs didn't make him weak. They just made him experienced. Experience teaches harder lessons. A few weeks later, Jordan and I met up against Sam Deli, Sam Booth, same paper cups sweating onto the table. "You ever regret it?" he asked. "Walking away?" I shook my head. "No, even knowing how it turned out." I smiled. "Especially because of how it turned out." He nodded slowly. "Funny how clarity always shows up late. It's only if you ignore it early," I replied. The last time I thought about Leela was unexpected. I was sorting through old emails when I found one from months back. A long message I'd written but never sent. Pages of explanation, questions, emotion. I read it once, then I deleted it. Not because it wasn't valid, but because I didn't need her to understand. Anymore, that was the final release. Here's the truth people don't like to hear, but need to learn. You can be kind. You can be loyal. You can be consistent and still not be chosen. That doesn't mean you failed. It means you were offering something too. Someone who couldn't receive it sometimes. The most loving thing you can do for both people is step back and stop auditioning. Months later, standing at a crosswalk downtown, I caught my reflection in a darkened storefront. Window, older, calmer, more settled in my own skin. I didn't see loss. Anymore, I saw growth. I saw a man who finally understood that attraction isn't negotiated, and love isn't proven through endurance. It's mutual or it's missing. Claire reached for my hand as the light changed. We crossed the street together. No rush. No hesitation. Just forward movement. If there's one lesson worth carrying from this story, it's this. When someone is into you, you won't have to guess. You won't have to wait. You won't have to shrink. And when they're not, walking away isn't giving up. It's choosing yourself. I used to think the title of this story was an ending. She's just not that into me. Now I know better. It was a beginning. Because the moment I accepted that truth, I stopped chasing uncertainty and started living with intention. And that changed everything.